Okay, so this video is targeted towards window cleaners. If you've been around for a long time, then some of what I've got to say is probably not going to be much help to you, but probably someone who's more newer to the industry. I'm going to touch on a few subjects today. I'm going to talk about customer expectations. I'm going to talk about non-routine window cleaning, and I'm also going to talk about glass scratch waivers. So, first of all, I will just touch briefly on the first topic, working to the customer's expectations, but it ties in with the non-routine window cleaning. So, a good friend of mine, Neil Brown, who's also from New Zealand, he coined it perfectly when he said to me, Nick, it's not about you. You work to the customer's expectations because just due to my nature, I tend to obsess over things. I put a high-powered magnifying glass on everything that I do, and I was spending way too long in people's houses, which is not it's not profitable to do that. And also, you're to a certain degree when you're in the customer's house, you're inconveniencing them. You want to get the job done and get out of there. There's a happy middle ground between it crosses over somewhere between the customer's expectations and doing a really good job, and they meet somewhere in the middle. If you're not meeting customer expectations, obviously that's a problem. But if you're working way and above them, I can almost guarantee you're doing that more for your sake than the customers. Some people just like that. They can't walk away from a window that's not perfect. We have to remember that our face is right up against the glass, and the customer is not looking at the glass, they're looking through the glass. Now, I'm not suggesting that you don't do a really great job, but as mentioned, it dissects somewhere, and you need to find where that is. I think can be quite a problem for people who have never worked for a larger window cleaning business and maybe just started their own company, because you can really have no real sense of the quality of work that's kind of like the status quo accepted. So one problem that can create for you is that if you're trying to reach that level of perfection, it can make you do things like make the poor decision of starting to initial clean windows when you haven't been asked to do that. Like they say, no good deed goes unpunished, and I've experienced this myself. It can get you into a lot of trouble. So one thing that prompted me to make this video is in a Facebook group, I seen someone mentioning the first time that they were going to clean quite a large house, and their plan was the first thing they were going to do is they were going to scrape all the windows with a razor blade. Well, first of all, I'm going to say something that may sound a bit controversial, but I'd like to say now that if you can't identify different glass surfaces, you should never use any abrasive on any piece of glass. I know that the industry attitude is that things like the 0.000 steel wool and a razor blade is safe and accepted part of the window cleaner's toolkit, but they can also create a lot of damage to certain glass surfaces. And I'll talk about some of the ways that you can go about preventing that to happen. I would never ever use any abrasive on a window unless you have talked to the customer and they are wanting you to remove non-water soluble debris from the glass. If you're doing that, the customer needs to be paying for that. Okay, when quite a few years ago, what I would do is that the first time I would clean someone's windows, I would initial clean the whole house. And my attitude towards this was that, okay, yep, it takes me a bit longer the first time I go, but then I get the windows to a really good state, and then moving forward, it's easier for me. Well, put it this way, if you're employed by a company to go and clean their windows and you just took it on yourself to go, oh, I'm going to initial clean those windows and get them, I tell you what, you would probably run into problems with your employer. They're gonna want to know, like, what took you so long on that job? Oh, okay, I just wanted to do a really good job, so I initial clean the whole house. And they're going to say, wait a minute, we've quoted these people to clean their windows and you've initial cleaned them. You've been there 3 times as long as that you're meant to, and they're not going to accept that, put it that way. But when you work for yourself, you can do stuff like that. But it's not smart business practice. Another thing too is that if you haven't been asked to initial clean those windows and you start using abrasive on the glass, you could find yourself in a situation where then you start to get blamed for any problems that are on that glass surface already. So again, I'll stress and I'll say, this may sound controversial, but if you cannot identify different glass surfaces, you should never ever use anything abrasive on any piece of glass. Now I'm going to jump straight to glass scratch waivers. I would like to put it to everyone who's watching this video. Do you ever know of a situation where someone in the real world has had a client sign one of those waivers, then all their glass has been scratched, and then it's been tested in court and that person has come out and won, and that waiver has actually saved them from a lawsuit? Personally, I've never heard of a situation like that in the real world. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened, but if it has happened, you know, I would love to hear about it. I'll just give an example. In New Zealand, we have something called the Consumer Guarantees Act. So when you buy an item from a store, it's expected to last X amount of time. So for example, when you buy a new laptop, there's different items that have a different lifespan. So let's say, for example, a laptop is expected to last at least 3 years. So when you go into the shop, what they'll try to do is some of them will try to sell you an extended warranty, and they will say, okay, if you buy this laptop and you pay a bit extra, you will get full replacement for the next 3 years. If you don't pay it, maybe it breaks down and then you're not covered. But whatever terms and conditions the shop tries to impose, it does not trump the Consumer Guarantees Act. The Consumer Guarantees Act is God as far as that goes. So if you are getting clients to sign glass scratch waivers, do you know that that can stand up in court? I would strongly recommend that if you are using a glass scratch waiver, that you contact your insurance company and you show them the document and you ask them, is it in line with their terms and conditions? Because no matter how much small print that you have in your own business, I can guarantee you a large insurance company or an insurance company of any size is going to have lawyers look over their fine print with a magnifying glass. You could be in a situation where you are accused of creating some damage. You have your glass scratch waiver and saying, hey, look, I warned them. There could be fabricating debris on this toughened glass and now it's scratched. You could find yourself in a situation that when you contact your insurance company to go into bat for you, that they drop you like that. Again, I'm theorizing this, but I'm saying it would be due diligence that if you're getting customers to sign this glass scratch waiver, what you should be doing is to make sure it's watertight and your insurance company agrees with it, and they're going to stand beside you if you're in that situation. Another thing that we have to remember is that when you go into the courtroom, it's not a panel of experts on glass that you'll be facing. It's people who know very little about glass, and it could go against you either way. A lot of you will know of Henry Grover Jr. So he has been an expert witness in court cases of this nature. He doesn't do it for free. And do you really want to be in a situation where it comes down to you needing expert witness in a court case. You could be accused of scratching like 40, 50, $60,000 worth of glass, and it's, you know, that's what I'm just saying, is that if you're initial cleaning windows, make sure you understand what you're getting into. Make sure your glass scratch waiver is watertight, and also make sure that you know what you're actually working on. I would theorize that the overwhelming majority of window cleaners know very little about the actual surface that they're cleaning. As time goes on, glass is getting more and more and more tech, and it's not going to get any easier. So one thing that I'm going to say that may be helpful, you may think this is a bit extreme, is that what I've done is that these are quite heavy. We have two major glass suppliers in New Zealand. We have Metro Glass, and then I've got a box of Viridian glass samples. I basically have a sample of every type of glass available in this country. All of my abrasives, whether that be a compound or a pad, I've tested extensively on every single one of these samples. I do have an advantage that I've worked in the glazing industry, and as I mentioned, through my nature of kind of putting the magnifying glass on everything that I have in my life, I do a lot of research. If I wasn't working with glass for a profession, I would be doing it as a hobby. I love glass. I can't really explain why, but I love everything about it. I love caring for it. I love all the tech involved. There's so many variables. There's so much to learn. And when you start getting into the advanced restoration of glass surfaces, you have to become your own expert. So there's a lot of troubleshooting, problem solving, theorizing, and personally, when I make a new discovery, I just get a real buzz from that. So I'm just going to touch on quickly. Now, this isn't very scientific, but this is the best that I could manage. Is that what I did is that I've got a 3-inch disc, and I spin it at 600 RPM, and I place it on each glass sample and hold it and just stationary in one spot, which is not something that you're going to do in a real world situation. But I've done that with every single pad I've got and every single compound I've got. And then what I do is I inspect the glass surface. And then all of my chemicals, I've done the same. I've left them on the glass and I leave them for a certain amount of time. I put them on the surface for 10 minutes and leave them there. I'm not sure if the camera will pick this up, but this is a stop sol sample. You can see if one of my products has completely destroyed the surface of this glass. Now, if that was the client's glass, you're in a lot of trouble. Again, like I said, that's not very scientific, my method, but at least it's a uniform way of testing all my products, compounds, pads on glass to see what's safe. I've also developed a system which is very similar to how our personal lives are, is that generally we know what to do by making mistakes, and then hopefully not making those mistakes again, or not making them too many times. So what I'm looking to do is I'm always looking to create damage on glass. If I can find a way to damage a glass surface, I get excited, because as soon as I know how to damage glass in every single way possible, which is hard because there's a lot of ways to damage it, then you know how to not damage the glass surface. I went to a local car wrecker which has over 1,000 cars, and I spent a good 6-7 hours up there, and it was probably about maybe the fifth hour into doing experiments on a lot of different windows that I managed to wreck the tints on one of the cars. So doing that, I found a product that I was using. Maybe I would say maybe I tested it on, it might have been 300 cars before I found that one car that was problematic. Then I had to work out what it was about that glass that was problematic. Okay, and it was it had a pyrolytic window tint. So I'm not going to go into too great a detail because I end up going down a rabbit hole, but there's a couple of different ways of tinting glass. One is called a body tint, and if you can imagine, if you had a cup of water and you tipped food coloring through it, the color goes through the glass completely. Another way is the pyrolytic glass process, and it's known as an online process. When the glass comes off the float bath, it's basically the tint is put on the glass on the same production line. Then there's also offline coatings where the glass has come off the production line, maybe it's stored for a period of time, and then another process is done to the glass. That is called the sputtering glass process. You can Google both of those terms, pyrolytic and sputtering. So a lot of glass now, instead of a body tint, the surface tints are becoming a lot more common, and they're much more problematic as far as routine cleaning of the glass and also restoration of the glass. How do you go about getting samples like this? Well, what I did is I just walked into Metro Glass and I walked into Viridian Glass, and I said to them, look, I'm working with your product a lot, and I was wondering if I could get a full set of the samples that you have. And Metro Glass handed the samples over very freely. Viridian Glass was a little bit, just the guy I spoke to was a bit more wary. He was like, what are you going to do with the glass? And I said, I'm going to do a series of experiments. And he said, you're going to need to get this checked with our manager. So he gave me his details. I emailed him. The next day I got a phone call from the original guy I spoke to, and he said, your samples are ready. All I can say is have the cheek to do that. You're working with these manufacturers' products, and you have a duty of care for your customers to know how to look after that glass and clean it safely. Another thing I was able to get from Metro Glass is I have their handbook. Now, I'm not sure what part of the world you're in or what the different suppliers of glass. We don't have any glass manufacturing in New Zealand. We don't have any float glass facilities. It's all brought in from overseas. But Metro have a very extensive handbook here. Like the titles are, we've got glass, processing, selection, performance, design, glazing, compliance, and reference. And this is a wealth of knowledge. When I first got this book, I learned a lot from just flicking through here. Initially, when I first started to talking to Henry Grover Jr., I was very intimidated by the level of his knowledge, and I thought, there's no way, how would I ever get to that level? But what you'll find is that, like everything in life, you just build on it. You stack up knowledge, little bits, little bits, little bits. It's like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. Sometimes you get a piece of the puzzle and you don't really know what significance it has, so you place it there, and then at a later date some more pieces of the puzzle come, and then you're like, wow, that's where that fits in. So you can just little bits of knowledge over a long period of time stack up to extensive knowledge. I think that's about all I have to say in this video. So just in summary, I would just say, when you're cleaning windows, just don't lose your mind while you're doing it. Keep in mind that we look at glass differently than what the client does. Stick to the scope of work that you've been asked to do. If you haven't been asked to initial clean the glass, don't initial clean the glass. If you're being asked to initial clean the glass, make sure you know the surfaces that you're dealing with. Know your glass. And also, if you're going to start having things like waivers to remove you from liability, just make sure these things are watertight and they could actually stand up in a real court case, or you could end up in a lot of problems. So hopefully you found this video helpful. If you have any comments, I'd love to hear them. And obviously my company's name is Glass Genius. I don't claim to know everything about glass. I'm always learning. There's always something to learn. I'm very passionate about the subject, and if you think something that I've said is factually incorrect, let me know, because the only reason that I believe the things that I do is because I believe them to be correct. So I'm always happy, and I stand to be corrected, because if I'm believing something that's not right, then I'm at a disadvantage. Okay, thanks for watching.